without notice. Senator Fifield.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Conroy. Minister, the Independent Communications Committee, chaired by Mr Alan Hawke, has found that the government's $22 million NDIS advertising campaign is in breach of the guidelines on information and advertising campaigns. Mr Hawke's advice of 13 June says, and I quote, "The committee is concerned that running the proposed national campaign in Western Australia may not fully comply with Principle 4 of the guidelines, specifically the need for campaign information to clearly and directly affect the interests of recipients. The committee considers that the need to run the proposed campaign advertising in Western Australia at this time requires a specific and strong justification, given there is not currently a negotiated agreement to co-fund and implement the disability care scheme in that state. Why is the government defying the advice of Mr Hawke and breaching its own advertising guidelines, and will the government now cease the advertisements in Western Australia?"
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Conroy.
Thank you, Mr President. Could I thank the Senator for his question? Mr President, when we were elected in 2007, this government committed to cleaning up the taxpayer funding spending spree that was the Howard government system, and we have delivered on that commitment. When we were elected, this government was faced with a system that had next to no independent oversight and no integrity. Before Labor introduced the Independent Communications Committee, there was simply no scrutiny, Mr President, of government advertising. Labor introduced tough guidelines, Mr President, which govern the content and presentation of campaigns, removed ministers from an active role in campaigns and significantly reduced costs. Advertising is driven by the legitimate need, Mr President, to inform the public about their rights, their entitlements and their obligations, such as the census campaign, ongoing Defence Force recruiting, health campaigns like quit smoking, obesity, illicit drugs and digital switchover. We have increased reporting requirements, and unlike the Howard government, we set out exactly how much taxpayer money is spent on campaign advertising.
Order. Senator Fifield.
Point of order, Mr President. On relevance, I've let the minister go for a minute and a half, and he has not been in any danger of straying close to the specific question, which was, why has the government defied its own advertising guidelines? Why has the government ignored Mr Hawke's advice?
Order. Senator Wong.
Well, Mr President, I understand that those on the other side might think that the guidelines are irrelevant to a question about advertising, but they clearly are relevant, and the minister is going through an explanation of the guidelines.
Order. I do draw the minister's attention to the question. You've still got 30 seconds remaining to address the question. The minister.
Schools and Disability Care Australia campaigns have been reviewed by the Independent Communications Committee and certified by the relevant department secretaries as being in compliance with the guidelines. Feedback was given by the ICC, as is normal, and it was taken on board. In fact, the Independent Communications Committee has never
Senator
issued—
Senator Fifield.
Point of order, Mr President. Senator Conroy is actually misleading the Senate. The Government Communications Committee did not—
That's debating the issue. That's
approve the campaign.
That's not a point of order.
The committee said the campaign
that is not
was in
a point
breach.
of order. No, there's no point of order. That's not a point of order. The minister has got 12 seconds remaining.
Feedback was given by the ICC, as is normal, and it was taken on board. In fact, the Independent Communications Committee has never issued a negative compliance report against a Labor government campaign.
Order.
But, Mr President,
time has expired. Senator Fifield.
Thank you, Mr President, and thanks Senator Conroy for confirming that the government has defied and ignored Mr Hawke's advice. But if I can ask the minister, why do the NDIS television advertisements contain no details about eligibility? And what is the purpose of television advertisements that make little effort to explain the NDIS, and like all advertisements under this government, simply contains slogans and a reference to a website?
The Minister.
Mr President, hypocrisy has reared its head today because, Mr President, in 2007 the Howard government spent a whopping $254 million on advertising with no independent oversight. In 2012, Mr President, the government spent less than half than the Howard government did in 2007, when the member for North Sydney was trying to convince Australians that work choices was their friend. The high watermark for government advertising will always be the $84 million Mr Hockey spent on media placement for work choices alone, including $31.8 million over just 3 weeks, Mr President. Just 3 weeks. In October 2000.
Order. That is disorderly. You know that. Order.
For the 5th year in a row.
Conroy, your time has expired. Order. Just wait a minute. There's a discussion taking place in front of me which shouldn't take place. Order. When there's silence, we'll proceed. Senator Fifield is entitled to be heard in silence. Senator Fifield.
Isn't the public entitled to be a little cynical about the government's intentions in spending $22 million between now and August, including $7 million over the next 10 days, on advertisements with little information about a scheme that will not be completed for another 7 years?
Just wait a minute, Senator Conroy. When there's silence, order. 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 Now, when everyone's finished, we'll go on with question time. Senator Conroy.
Mr President, as I was saying, the member for North Sydney spent on media placement for work choices alone, including $31.8 million over just 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks in October 2005. And for the 5th year in a row, the government has spent over $100 million less. $100 million less than the $254 million Howard government's advertising spend in 2007. 5 years, half. 5 years, half less. We will continue to spend significantly less than the Liberal National Coalition, Mr President. And for those opposite to stand up and have any credibility whatsoever, you just have to think back to the outrageous misuse and abuse of taxpayers' funds that the Work Choices campaign represented. And don't you sit there and snigger, Senator Sinodis. I know you'd left the building by then, but
Order.
Can I
Time
say—
has expired.